from the University of Virginia Center for Politics.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sophia Bangura. I'm a government major here at the University of Virginia, and I'm currently an intern with the Center for Politics. It's my honor to introduce our three participants for this evening. First, we have a seasoned public policy advocate and political strategist. Maria Cardona has more than 2 decades of experience in government, politics, and public policy, and public relations and community affairs. Recognized as among the most influential Latinos in the country, Maria is a principal at the Dewey Square Group, leading the multicultural and public affairs practices. Maria joined DSG in 2005 and founded DSG's Latino Strategies practice, Latinovations, leveraging her reach in the Latino community by advocating on Latino issues. Maria is also known for her work as a political commentator and is currently a CNN and CNN Espanol political contributor. She appeared frequently on MSNBC, Fox, Univision, and Telemundo prior to signing an exclusive deal with CNN. While at the Dewey Square Group, Maria served as a senior advisor and spokesperson to Hillary Clinton for her presidential campaign during the 2008 Democratic primary election. Our next guest is Dr. David Ramadan. He is a seasoned executive and international consultant with more than 25 years of advocacy, business, and government relations experience, who served 2 terms in the Virginia House of Delegates between 2012 to 2016. His finesse for cultivating relationships and working across the aisle has enabled him to advise political candidates for president, governor, the U.S. Senate, and the U.S. House of Representatives. In addition to serving as a Center for Politics scholar, Ramadan is a 1993 and a 1995 alumnus of George Mason University and also serves as an adjunct faculty member at the School of Policy and Government. From 2010 to 2012, he was a member of the George Mason University Board Visitors, appointed by the Governor of Virginia. Dr. Ramadan immigrated to the United States from Lebanon in 1989 after attending the International College in Beirut. Ramadan completed his graduate studies at Oxford University, the American Graduate School of Business, and earned his PhD from Vanderbilt University. They're very accomplished. Finally, we have Tara Setmeyer, who is serving her fourth year as a scholar at the Center for Politics here at UVA. Ms. Setmeyer is a co-founder and a CEO of the Seneca Project, a bipartisan, woman-led super PAC dedicated to galvanizing modern women's voters to safeguard women's rights and protect our democracy. Prior to joining UVA, Ms. Setmeyer was named as a Harvard Institute of Politics Spring 2020 Resident Fellow. In January 2020, she joined the Lincoln Project as a senior advisor and co-hosted the live show, The Breakdown, on the organization's streaming channel, LPTV, until June 2024. She is a former CNN political commentator, contributor to ABC News, and former GOP communications director on Capitol Hill. She appeared on shows like ABC's The View, ABC's Good Morning America, and The Real Time with Bill Maher. Today, she regularly appears on air commentator on MSNBC's and various other news outlets in the U.S. and abroad. Last one. After spending 27 years with the Republican Party, Ms. Setmeyer publicly left the GOP in November 2020. She now identifies as a conservative independent. Please welcome our amazing guest.
I love it. Thank you so much, Sophia. That's we all are
simpatico in our love for democracy and politics, and it is an honor and a privilege to be a part of the UVA family, a part of the Center for Politics, and also to share this event with my fellow Seneca Project Advisory Board member, Maria Cardona. You missed that part of the bio.
Thank you, Sarah.
So, guys, this is October, I think, right?
21st.
Is it?
21st.
It feels like we have been in a perpetual state of election politics for 9 years. So forgive me if I have no idea what day or date it is, other than we are hurtling toward the end of this election cycle, which has got to be one for the record books on so many levels. And the idea of an October surprise, I think at this point, is almost moot.
Yeah.
What could possibly happen? We've had assassinations, we've had manhood conversations, we've had cats and dogs.
We did?
You might have heard.
I don't know. I was playing golf.
Yeah. Did you take a shower?
Clubs, you know.
It has been extraordinary. We've had special counsel revelations. I remember a time where a drunk driving conviction 30 years prior was a oh my gasp moment. Those days are long past. So what in 2024 would you define as an October surprise? Ladies first.
That is the question, right, Tara? Because you're absolutely right. I think in this day and age, the idea of an October surprise is almost quaint. Because we, in how you define, or how we have come to define an October surprise in eras past, we have one every day, if not one every hour. And sometimes we think, though I think we're past this, oh my God, this is the end. It's not. It's never going to be the end until we end it on November 5th, hopefully, right? But there will be, I think, cumulatively things that happen, and we're already seeing it, where I believe at the end of the cycle, November 5th, Americans are going to look back and say that all of these things were what signaled to me, what motivated me, what crystallized in my mind my ultimate decision to vote one way or the other. And the other thing I'll say about October surprises is that, sadly, in the realm of things that would be scandalous and that would bring down a candidate, I think there's one candidate in the race that we have seen nothing will bring him down, nothing. And I don't think that's the case for the other one. And so that's why you have one that's super disciplined every single day, talking about messaging, talking about policies, talking about what the other candidate will mean for the election. And then you have the other candidate talking about Arnold Palmer's huge golf club. and the enemy from within, and wanting to use the military to attack Americans, and immigrants eating cats and dogs, and other things.
Mass deportation.
And mass deportations, and then continuing with the election lie, which at the end of the day is what has kept his supporters supporting him. And that is what they will continue to believe, and they will believe anything that comes out of his mouth. And so we'll see what happens in the next 2 weeks. I think anything can still happen. The question is, what will it mean, if anything?
David, October surprise, what does it mean to you, and is it even possible for something to constitute an October surprise in 2024?
I'm a proud immigrant. I'll tell you, I don't eat cats, I don't eat dogs. I do eat geese. And last I remembered, Republicans used to hunt, and that was okay.
Oh, there you go.
But they forgot that nowadays. I put my professor hat and I looked up the textbook definition of October surprise. And it said, an event, scandal, or significant development that occurs shortly before an election, often in October, aimed at shifting public opinions or impacting the election results. I think I've been in this country for 34 great years, greatest country on earth. best country the Lord ever created. And I was a Republican for most of my life until Donald Trump became the nominee in my party. And the day that he became the nominee in my party in 2015, I was still in office, I resigned from the party. And I've been watching this closely. So I've been through a few elections, and I think, Tara, you'd agree with me that this is probably even different than 2016, 2020, the only election that the numbers have not moved, right? So we had a surprise 2 months ago when we had the Biden down.
Right.
We had it way before September. We had Kamala come in, and yeah, everybody knows how to pronounce her name, right? It's Kamala. It's not that hard, folks.
Right.
It's Kamala. I'm a conservative, still a conservative. I know how to pronounce it. And she became the nominee, so that was a surprise there. But all what she did is she's back to where Biden would have been if he had not dropped that debate.
Right.
Right?
That's right.
Trump lost. Trump didn't move. No. He's still at his 47, 48. Democrats went down and then back. So would it shift? Would anything shift the results today? Very few things might. I'm Lebanese. I'm up till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning every day, watching what's happening in the Middle East, in Israel and Lebanon. Tonight, I'll be doing 2 or 3 TV interviews on Arab channels because I'm fluent in Arabic and following that. Even with real war happening, significance of that to American politics hasn't happened. So short of a nuclear attack on Iran, short of a major war that'll drag us directly into it, and that's what Biden administrations make sure put the red line there, there is no October surprise.
I would argue, though, that Kamala is further along than Biden would have been at this point, even if he had performed better at the debate, because of women. And I'm not just saying that because I'm biased in a women's organization, but part of the reason why I made the decision to start the Seneca Project was because of what we saw post-Dobbs. And the gender gap this time around is significantly different. So I would argue, and we believe at the Seneca Project, that women are going to be the deciding factor in this election in the battleground states ultimately, and that will save the democracy. But there's still this trepidation a little bit with college-educated white women in the suburbs. From 2016 to 2020, Donald Trump actually increased his support among suburban white women. This time around, it's different because of Dobbs. And I think that and maybe I'm wrong, but it's clear that Donald Trump's campaign has made a decision to go after the bros, right? This is a very bro-heavy, toxic masculinity type of campaign, unlike anything we've ever seen, which would seem counterintuitive. All of us have worked on campaigns. David's been a candidate. You would usually try to expand the tent, not limit who you want. Maria, do you think that it's possible for Donald Trump, because to David's point, he has pretty much hit a ceiling. But they seem to think, they basically said to hell with women at this point, right? I can't imagine that they're going to increase their numbers this time. In fact, polling has shown that white women are moving toward Kamala and may vote Democratic for the first time since 1980, I believe. But do you think that there's an opportunity here for Trump to make inroads, particularly with Latino men and Black men, as well as the non-college educated white dudes that he's trying to get out? Do you think that there's an opportunity there to counterbalance what we see as a massive gender gap?
Definitely not as much as what they are counting on. And I'll tell you why I think that. I've looked at the numbers. I've talked to many people who know how to poll African Americans. I've talked to a lot of people, and I work with pollsters who know how to poll the Latino community. The numbers today are not that different than what Biden had in 2020. They are not what the polls say. Let me just tell you that right now. The numbers for African American vote, and certainly men and Latino men, are not what the polls say. Those polls, when they talk about an oversample of the African American community or the Latino community, it's like 100 people. You cannot extrapolate correctly with that few, that small of a sample size. You just can't. Other polls and pollsters, like I have said, who understand how to poll these communities have said that the numbers are very similar to what Biden had, what he won with in 2020. That doesn't mean that the Harris campaign is going to leave anything to chance. She's not. She understands that she has got to talk to every single voter, and that's exactly what she's doing. She is not taking anything for granted. While the Trump campaign, I agree with you. I think he has said literally and figuratively, to hell with women.
Well, it's a man's world.
Right.
Is his theme song.
Exactly.
Came out to it proudly at the RNC.
That's right. And here's this, as a strategist, this is a head scratcher for me, because Tara's right. At this part of the campaign, you are sitting down at your table and you are looking at, where can I go after voters who are not supporting me right now? It seems to me that Trump is going after voters that should already be supporting him right now. He seems to still be trying to go after his base, which is why what he says every single day and the stuff that comes out of his mouth is so crazy, because we know that his base will never leave him, and they love that. Now, I've heard from his strategists that they're going after low propensity voters, which is why they're going after these Latino men and the African American men, but the low propensity voters within those communities. So the head scratching part of that is that, as you all know very well, in order to get a voter out to vote, you need to have contact with them at least 3 times. A normal voter, a likely voter, a regular voter, a registered voter. A low propensity voter, you need to double that. And the only way to do that is with a long-term, well-established, community-based infrastructure of actual people and resources and offices that can actually go and, hey, David, what are you doing? Let's go out.
Direct voter contact.
Direct to voter contact. They're doing none of that. They're putting everything that they have in ads. And the ad makers think that those ads are effective. They're horrible, they're negative, they're disgusting, they're gross, but they think they work. But it's not going to be enough, in my estimation, to get out low propensity voters. Because if you're a low propensity voter and you're not already inclined to support Donald Trump no matter what, why would you now? I mean, it makes no sense to me.
It seems like a risky strategy for sure. And they certainly don't have the same amount of money that the Democrats have raised. Mm-hmm. But we also know he didn't have the same amount of money in 2016 either, and pulled it off. David, you and I know that Republicans used to have a reputation for being outstanding get out the vote organizers. Our ground game was superb for a long time, until it far outpaced Democrats for a very long time. And the Obama campaign changed that with their 50-state strategy and modernized it and looked at what Republicans were doing and said, oh, okay, we've got this, we're gonna modernize it, and it worked. But this time around, the fact that the RNC has been relegated now to just an extension of the Trump campaign, as opposed to what the RNC was built to do, which is get out the vote, get those folks to the polls, because all the rallies, that's one thing.
Correct.
But that's different than making sure you're registered and then actually physically filling out your ballot, whether it's by mail or going to the polling place or getting out there, knowing when you can go and vote. I mean, being an active participant in democracy takes work. That's right. It takes work. It's more than just showing up to a rally for some, entertainment, Fat Elvis Vegas lounge act, which is what Donald Trump has turned into at this point, but they love it. So do you think, though, that this, now we're in Are we still in the persuasion mode? Usually we're in the get out to vote
We are.
mode at this point. Do you think that the Republicans are going to be able to do this and turn out the people they need, given, to Maria's point, that the apparatus on the ground game, it's been outsourced to super PACs like Elon Musk, who's out there paying people off $1 million to get out the vote, which is questionably legal or not?
Before I answer that, a couple more points following what you both said. Women are going to be the determining factor to sway it to Harris. But we're still at 48-48 at this point.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yep.
I think that segment of the polling that we didn't understand in 2016, right? I don't publish what I think. I publish a lot, but not on polls. But on polls, I never published. But I was wrong once, 2016. We all gave our mea culpa, right? Because there was that shy vote that was afraid to say, I'm voting for him, right? And there wasn't the October surprise of Comey and all the other stuff.
Right.
I think there is a shy women vote today.
So do I.
We were just talking about this.
Voting
do I.
is going to vote
Yes.
for Harris.
Yes.
We're not seeing it. The polls are still showing 48-48. I teach at George Mason as well, and we put out a Schar School poll, poll today with the Washington Post, and it's 48-48, dead heat. Except, we'll talk about the 7 states in a minute, which was good news for the Harris campaign. But there is a segment of women, mostly white women, soft Republican votes, pro-lifers, that gotten so disgusted with what they're seeing that they're quietly, I anticipate, gonna vote there. He, on the other side, is not, or the Republican campaign, they didn't give up on women. I think they miscalculated. They think this disgusting part is attractive to women. Now, I don't know which women they think is that attractive to, but I think they do. And I'm having that discussion with some people in those circles. I still have friends, and they think that is attractive to women. No, they're miscalculating there. So,
Good luck with that.
yeah.
Yeah, just really quick on that point right there. We were looking at the messaging with women and kind of taking the freedom message and kind of redefining the pro-choice message, because I was pro-life for many years in the Republican Party, and I've evolved on this, particularly since Dobbs, just recognizing what the fallout has been. And this idea that, because Senator Barbara Boxer is on our advisory board, and we kind of laugh because even Maria and I, we used to battle like hell back in the day. There are videos of us back in 2008 on election day. Did I send that to you? Our picture, I think I found of it recently, of us going back and forth over, Obama and McCain, and then over the years on CNN, we used to battle over Hillary. And we are the, like sisters in this battle now, because it is our love of country and defeating MAGA supersedes everything else. We can argue about marginal tax rates again one day. But Senator Barbara Boxer was another one who we probably didn't agree on anything policy-wise during my time in the party, but we agree on the importance of women protecting our rights and never going back. And she told a story about how when she was a little girl, her mother would take her to go vote. And she would pull the lever. That was very exciting to her. And it was kind of sparked her interest in politics. But she would turn to her and say, don't tell your father. And that is similar to what moment we're in now with these Republican women that have these MAGA husbands. And they're disgusted with Donald Trump, but they want to stay married. And so they're not saying, they're going along, yeah, okay, but they're going along with it. And we changed the messaging a little bit. It used to be my body, my choice for women. But now we're saying my ballot, my choice. The ballot box is one of the last places that's sacrosanct and private for women. And nobody has to know who you voted for. And I think that's a powerful closing message that definitely Republicans are not happy about. And that's why Liz Cheney is out there today with Kamala Harris campaigning with her, which if you would have asked any one of us 10
Oh
years
my
ago,
goodness.
we would have told you were out of your mind.
Right.
You couldn't even write that into a West Wing episode. Like, no,
No one would believe it.
with Kamala
Right.
Harris.
Didn't
No
happen.
way.
Right.
And here she is.
Yeah.
And she made a comment about being pro-life and how she was pro-life. But since Dobbs and seeing what it actually looks like,
Yep.
that you can still have your beliefs, but the impact on women's lives is too important and to ignore. So just to follow up on what you were saying.
And if I could, I'm sorry, if I could just add to that, it's astonishing to me that both pollsters, even commentators on TV, mostly men,
Of course.
Just
are
leave.
once, except for David,
we love our male
are
allies.
once again, but I think you'll agree with me, are once again the way that they did in 2022. Do you guys remember the red wave? Oh no, we don't, because there was none.
It was a
there
tinkle.
Yes, right, exactly. And there was none because the same thing that I think, and is happening even more now, to your point, David, this energy, this mobilization, this women are pissed off, is not being measured in the polls because pollsters don't ask the right question.
Right.
So when I'm on a panel with these Republican men, they're like, oh, Maria, women are going to vote on the economy. You know, they're worried about, you know, groceries. And I turned to them and I was like, you know what? Women have the ability to think about more than one issue at a time. Did you know that? I mean, it's just astonishing to me that they forget what happened in 2022, that they don't understand that women are complex individuals, and that they can think about the economy as being a huge priority, but also understand that the economy is coming back, but that their rights won't if they go away. And so many women, and I'm one of these women, my daughter is back there and she'll be mad that I'm pointing her out. She's 17 years old and she's, you know, possibly looking at coming to UVA. But I do not want to live in a country where she is going to have less rights than I did. That is insane.
And never happened before in this country. A right has never been taken away.
And so Kamala Harris's slogan, "We're not going back," is wonderful because right now we are going back. Right now, a third of women live in states with Trump abortion bans. And if my daughter chooses to go to one of those states for college, I mean, I kind of have told her, I'm like, you're not going to Texas. You're not going to, you know, and I gave her a list of places
I
where
don't
she's not
think
going to go.
it's just an abortion issue. I think you're absolutely right. They're disgusted individually and they want to have that decision.
Right, that's right.
A friend of mine's
It's grown to that
is
for
an
sure.
elected Republican, conservative wife. She tells me last week, don't tell my husband, but I'm voting for him.
See?
Told you.
There you go.
We're on to something here.
I love
We're
it.
onto something here. But to answer
I think that's right.
So it's more a women thing, not an abortion thing.
Yeah.
And if the
Yeah,
message
that's right.
goes to
Yes.
this is a women thing, not an abortion thing.
Correct.
Because abortion will then have few that.
But see, that's why it's rights and freedoms. And
That's
that's
right.
what the Seneca Project has
Yeah.
done is so brilliant
And
because
that's-
you've expanded it.
And that's where we go back to
Correct.
where are we now? We're
That's
in
right.
GOTV now. There's no more. If there's probably, according to the polls, 4% undecided. Well, guess what? Research shows us they're never going to vote, right?
Right.
So the question is, who's going to bring out more of their 48%, right? Are they going to bring them out low propensity, medium? Who of the 48% can come out? And that is the game. And that's where who's got the better ground game. We did see that the Trump campaign were outsourcing it. In Nevada, there were fake reports
Oh, yeah.
of a company that was supposedly knocking on doors that they're not.
Why are we surprised?
I'm not surprised. But yes, this is a get out the vote effort now. And what brings people out? Two things. And I think we're starting to see that on both campaigns. It's fear or anger. You're seeing the fear messaging on the Republican side. immigrants are going to come take over. Immigrants are going to vote. You know, you send your boy to school, he comes back a girl. Because that happens in that, right? It's the fear message.
Yeah.
You see the anger message now coming out on the Democratic side. We're not talking about joy and happiness anymore. Now you get to get out the joy and happiness would have convinced people to vote for her or to like her. Now you got to bring out your base.
Correct.
And to bring out your base, you got to anger them, right? Look what they're doing on the other side. You got to be angry to show up, and that's where we are.
That's so true. And the dynamics, I mean, there are certain political axioms that just never change, despite how much of conventional wisdom has been thrown out the window since Donald Trump came down the golden escalator there. A lot of things are no longer conventional wisdom, but there are certain principles in politics that just don't change. And the idea that fear and anger are motivating factors. That's why there's so many negative ads. It's great to have the hero feel-good ads. That's wonderful, and you need that sometimes as closers, but you need to be motivated. And rainbows and hugging and love and vibes, that's not motivating when it comes time to taking that step. Mm-hmm. And especially for women, we have taken that fear to outrage to action. Mm-hmm. And that applies across the board to whatever it is that's important to those constituencies. And the idea, you're right, that it's more than just abortion. Yeah. We turned it around to it's trusting women. Mm-hmm. It's, do you trust women to make decisions in their own lives or not? We did an ad, our first launch ad called Time for Choosing. We took that language from the Ronald Reagan speech, A Time for Choosing, because we are literally in a time for choosing on a lot of levels. And it was important to bring those messages back. That's why I went to my first DNC. I've never been to a DNC ever. This year I went, and it was surreal for a lot of reasons. But to see Democrats chanting USA.
You have to invite me next time. They haven't invited me yet.
Next time.
I haven't done that yet.
But the difference is you're welcome. You're welcome to come. Just like you and I could not step foot in an RNC. I've been to 6 RNCs. I would never step foot in one again. A, I don't want to. And B, I wouldn't be safe, which is insane to think about. But anyway. But to hear the USA chants and to see the patriotic embrace of the flag and the military, those were Republican things.
That was brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, they shouldn't have been, but they were, right?
But that was
and
brilliant.
it was a brilliant way to bring that message back that it's more, it's so much bigger than just the policy differences. We are all Americans, as opposed to the exclusive message that's coming out of Donald Trump.
And you're so right. Those used to be Republican messaging and Republican signs. Folks, I remember, and this was a fact, we used to go out and knock on doors back in the day of sanity. And some of the things that we would notate on those walking sheets would be flag,
Yes.
likely a Republican.
Yes.
Right?
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Military,
Yeah.
likely a Republican.
Yep.
We used to notate that. That was the game before electronics and figuring out now people based on which subscriptions they have. But that was what we used to do. And that was brilliant of them this year to take that away and run with it. Not just took it away, but ran with it.
So let me ask you this. Some anchors and political commentators on certain networks are questioning whether it's a smart strategy for Kamala Harris to be palling around with Liz Cheney right now and to have these Republican for Harris events this close to the election, given that are there really still persuadable people out there? I think there's an argument either way here, whether how many there actually are. But do you think that this is a smart strategy because of how many Republicans are, I mean, Donald Trump still has 94% roughly of Republican voters, speaking of not changing. But do you think it's a smart strategy for her right now to be doing that 2 weeks before the election?
So let's talk about another Barbara, our friend Barbara Comstock, who is a scholar with us here. Barbara is one of my best friends. We served together in the Virginia House. Her husband jokes that I became her campaign boyfriend, campaign for Congress. And she went to Congress and she served a couple terms and then she lost one when Trump. Barbara is as conservative as they come. She's on TV. She has been doing this for years and years and years and decades. And Barbara was up in Pennsylvania. campaigning with the 100
Yeah.
Republicans that showed up.
On
She
stage.
endorsed
On stage with
on
Kamala
stage
Harris.
with Kamala Harris. Now, before she did that step, which is, look, it's a hard step to do. It's not easy. You got to give these people, the Liz Cheneys of the world, the Barbara Comstocks of the world, the Tara Sotomayor of the world, the kudos for doing that. I did not do it on a national level, but I did it on Virginia level. 3 years ago, I crossed the aisle and I went on the stump for my friend Terry McAuliffe for governor.
Kudos to you for that.
And thank you. And it was based on a couple of things. One, I really believed he'd be a better governor. I still say so today. Youngkin keeps proving me right every day. And then two, just watch my Twitter. I can't shut up. I keep pointing it out. And two, because of the personal friendship with Terry as well. But it's not easy going out there for somebody who's a lifelong Republican to go stand. I didn't go to the DNC, but I did all the Virginia ones, right? And stand out there because we still disagree, right? I mean, I didn't become a liberal. I'm still conservative. Right. You know, Maria and I will probably disagree on 80% of social issues. But you know what? I'll deal with that later.
Right.
We'll disagree on a lot of issues. I'll go back to those later. I'll go back to budget later.
I will yearn to
right?
go back to the day when we would
argue on budget.
About budgets, health
argue on healthcare,
public education.
Now,
those were the days.
I know.
Now we're talking about if people like my mom, who is a covered Muslim woman, should be allowed in this country or not.
I know.
Right? Now we're talking about, are we going to...
Or rounding her up
round
in
her
this
up
country as a
because she
legal
looks,
immigrant.
doesn't look like it, right? I'm part Argentine, part
just-
Lebanese.
Not
I don't
rounding,
want my Latino
rounding you up,
cousins.
rounding me up, rounding you up.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
Yeah, they could
I mean-
try.
but those days are just so to put people like Barbara out there, to put people like Liz out there, and Barbara and I endorsed Suhas Subramaniam for Congress, her old seat, right? Last week, and we went out there and we were helping Suhas run, and I'll tell you, it makes a difference when I
It's
walk.
the permission structure.
Permission.
Yes,
when
correct.
I walk into people in my old district and in Northern Virginia who know me and know that I'm still that conservative and say, I'm endorsing him. And he's a Democrat. And yes, we disagree on things, but I think he'll do a good member of Congress and I'll be proud to call him my congressman. It makes a difference. When Barbara and Liz walk out and tell, all we need is 1% difference, right?
That's right.
When you tell that 1%, give them that permission that yes, this is somebody we're comfortable, as uncomfortable as it is to be standing here with her. I am the daughter of Dick Cheney, not even Liz. Dick
No,
Cheney.
right?
I mean,
Yeah.
when she walks up and says, not just I'm Liz Cheney, I'm the daughter of Dick Cheney who's voting for Harris.
Yeah.
You're gonna get that 1%. This is all it's gonna take.
That's true. I mean, it's just like football is a game of inches. Elections are a game of small percentages. It's in the margins. You just need 50 plus one. And a funny story, I've gotten to know Barbara too through my participation here at UVA. And the first time I ever voted for Democrats in my life was 2018. And I live here in Virginia, and I recorded it. And I said, all right, it's the first opportunity after Trump won. I didn't vote for Donald Trump. I was always a never Trumper. But 2018 was my first opportunity now to vote again against him and Republicans. And I said, and it was Barbara Comstock, and I felt bad because I'm like, she's not that horrible, but I don't care. I'm voting every Republican out. And I felt like I was part of the people that she was, I voted her out, and I felt bad.
She was the only one who stood up to him when she
She
was.
was.
It's true.
But
She
that
was.
the vote. The
But
vote
that's
was-
right. And I was like, I don't care. I don't want Republicans having control of Congress. These people are insane. They're enabling Donald Trump. Oh, sorry, Barbara. So I joke with her about it, but it's okay.
She's fine.
Yeah, she's all right. She
Fine.
supports
She got over
Seneca.
it.
She's
She's
great.
fine.
I mean, she knows because she understands. There were a lot of us that it was really more about the Republican Party as a whole, sending that message, than it was about Barbara. So
But
Washington Post asked me the day that we were at her party at the end, and we announced that she lost. And the Washington Post asked me, why did she lose? And I said, it is the effing asshole, and that won the
Two words.
White House.
Donald
that's
Trump.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it was. They're like, you sure can I publish that? I said, yeah, you can publish that. I mean, she didn't lose because it was her.
Right.
She lost because people were voting against Donald Trump, not against her personally.
Exactly. But I think this issue of going after the moderate conservatives, moderate Republicans, even, in conservative leaning independents is really smart, because it seems to me that more and more are coming out of the woodwork. And you're seeing it both in people who served in elected positions or people who served even alongside Donald Trump in the White House. And when you have people who served alongside Donald Trump in the most important facets of running the country, the military, the Situation Room, communications, national security, and they're the ones who are coming out to say, this man is too dangerous to be in the Oval Office. You have to listen to that, because it's not one person, it's not two people, it's not three people. Kamala Harris was out like 2 days ago with an event of over 100 Republicans who have come out. And you see all these books, the Bob Woodward book about General Milley and John Kelly, and all of these folks who were with him and know him best are the ones who were saying the worst things about him and telling people and warning people, you cannot vote this man into office again. We have to listen to that. That's one thing. The other thing is let's not forget, to your point about people, is it smart of her doing this? Are progressives going to be pissed? No, progressives are not going to be pissed. AOC was in Pennsylvania for an event for Kamala with over 1,000 people. And so when you have a coalition that spans from Dick Cheney to AOC and Bernie Sanders, I mean, that speaks volumes about who you're appealing to and who you are fighting for.
When was the last time we saw former Joint Chiefs warning that the person he worked for was a fascist at his core?
I don't think that ever happened, did it?
Exactly. I'm being facetious here. Never.
See, that would have been in eras past an October surprise.
Absolutely.
Right?
That would have been an October surprise in years past.
Look, I mean, there's a basic level of, there's no other way to put it, folks. There's a basic level of intellect that I mean, we can't test for it. You can, but we don't, for people to run for office.
And decency.
Right? And decency. But you know what? Let's even put the decency aside, because, hey, it's Donald Trump's era, right? But intellect. I was listening yesterday to an interview that he did with, there's a war taking place right now. Israel got attacked. Israel attacked back. There are 50,000 people that are dead. There are millions that are out of their place. In Lebanon, there are another 1.5 million. And the Lebanese station asked him yesterday, well, what are you going to do about the war? And by the way, his daughter married a Lebanese, so he's all into Lebanese now. His youngest daughter and their in-laws are Lebanese. So he's supposedly up to, he knows what's happening. And he was asked, well, what's going to happen? We're going to stop it. It's going to be good. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. Lebanese people are going to be very happy. Lebanese people are going to be very happy. It's going to be good.
What?
Foreign policy, it's going to be good. There are 1.5 million people out of their homes in Lebanon. In Israel, they're getting hundreds of missiles that are flying in every day. Bibi Netanyahu's home was attacked by a drone. I talked to Bibi, it's going to be good. I'll end it like that. Wouldn't have happened if I was there. It's going to be beautiful. Lebanese are going to be very happy.
I'll build them apartments on the waterfront.
That was his son-in-law. Yeah, he says Gaza will make good waterfront. Yeah.
Oh, it's outrageous.
I mean,
but here's the thing, and this I think goes back to, and then we'll open it up to some questions. The foreign policy part of this, I think, has really not gotten the attention it deserves. And the presidency, the president doesn't have as much impact on domestic policy as people realize, right? They have a thing called Congress and separation of powers, and how the Senate and the House are made up and who controls what. That's what dictates our domestic policy. But on foreign policy, the president has the most unilateral power here. And the idea that given what's going on in the world, what's happening in the geopolitical space, that we have one candidate that is palling around, bragging about love letters and like fantasizing about a throuple with like Kim Jong-un and Vladimir Putin, and wants to abandon our allies and dismantle NATO, and and is investing money with the Saudis and doing interviews with them and all kinds of other corrupt foreign things that are
Giving
going on.
Putin COVID tests.
Giving Putin COVID. That would have been
another October surprise
in years past.
Man.
Good Lord.
Yep.
But he talked to Abdul.
You're right.
Oh,
Yeah.
right.
Abdul. I
Yeah.
talked to Abdul.
Yeah, it's all
And
good.
I told Abdul, I know where your house is.
Goodness.
That supposedly was supposed to be the head of the Taliban. No, he was not. And
Right.
there was one Abdul who was the negotiator. No, he didn't tell him, I know where your house is. And no, that's not how foreign policy works.
It's not how any of this works. And yet, the media lets him get away with this and scrutinizes Kamala Harris for a sentence or two about how different she'll be from a Joe Biden presidency.
Or because she said something in 2019
Right.
about fracking.
Right. Like, do you think, Maria, that the double standard, because there is one, I don't care what anybody says, I'm sorry, there's a double standard
There's
here.
a quadruple standard.
Yes, because she's black and a woman.
Exactly, and a daughter of immigrants.
Correct.
Indian.
Right, that's right.
Right, exactly.
It's-
exactly.
All
he say-
the things.
Yeah.
Right?
Didn't the VP nominee talk about curry smell?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Ma-
yeah.
And then to fix it, he was okay with fried chicken.
Yeah, I can't.
I mean,
This is what we're dealing with. This
Yeah.
is the binary choice. And yet, the media has normalized Trump and MAGA and JD Vance in a way that it's, in my opinion, it's a dereliction of duty, but it's malpractice. But do you think that the way the media has been covering this election has some part in why it's so close?
Absolutely. And I think that part of it is because so many have bought into the both sidesing of all of this because they want the debate. They want and I was talking to Larry earlier about how some networks are getting better at pointing out the dereliction of duty of Donald Trump. Some anchors are getting much better at it in terms of telling their audiences, this is not okay. This person, every time he starts talking, he's more deranged, he's more, you can see the mental decline. They talk about the enemy from within. They challenge Republican guests who try to justify all of the crazy stuff that Donald Trump is doing. So they're getting better at it. But 2 weeks before the election, it's kind of too late.
A little late.
They should have been doing this for a
From
year
day
and a
one,
half.
from the day that he was winning in the primary.
Exactly.
Remind
That's
folks, because we have amnesia in this country,
that's
unfortunately.
exactly
Very short
right.
attention span.
credit to his side for covering it up.
Yeah.
Credit to his side for
Yeah.
the cover-up wasn't on Biden's
Exactly.
side. Credit to the Republicans and to his campaign that they were able to run him and get him to where he is today, despite, and I'm not saying he's got Alzheimer's, folks. He may be. His father had Alzheimer's. He was at his age, he was losing it. But even if we put that aside, simply, and no offense to anybody of that age, but look, my father is that age. We went to a trip to Alaska recently, and I took my parents and my in-laws at the same time. Never do that. Don't take things. But, and I love my dad, and I talk to him all the time. He's a retired lawyer, and he's an intellectual, and reads, and stays active, and still goes to the gym every day. But I haven't spent that much time with him for 12, 14 hours every day. And there was a time where we walked into an elevator, and sorry, Dad, if you're watching, but I got out of the elevator. He's behind me, I'm pulling, and I look, and the elevator shut. And I'm like, where's my dad? He just stood there. He had that moment where he was like,
What do I do?
should I walk out? And I was like, Dad. He's like, oh, you want me to come out? And that was normal, right? That was just being an 88-year-old, right? Or he's 84 now, 84-year-old. So do I want my dad in the White House today? Hell no. And he is 100 times smarter than Donald Trump. And more decent.
Sure, right.
But
Right.
Well,
Right.
my cat is more decent and
And we
smarter
see
than
it,
Donald Trump.
we see that decline before our very eyes. And the normalizing of all of this has worked because now the Republican apologists are able to say, oh, well, that's just Donald Trump.
Right.
He's been that way since 2016. That's all baked in. People know what they're getting. What they don't know is, what does Kamala Harris represent, right? That's what drives me crazy.
Here's my final thought on that. Here's the difference, and this is from still a conservative. Both parties have their establishment, for lack of a better word. This is a group of professionals that have served in government for years and years. They were deputy assistant secretaries, and then they were assistant secretaries, and they were deputy secretaries, and they worked in administrations, and they know. They're professionals, right? And they go out when Democrats go out, they come back when they come back, Republicans have them, and so on. I don't care, and I said this when Biden was still running. I said, I don't care if he was on life support. That's fine, because do I really wanted somebody his age there? No. Right. But the rationing was that I know who we would put around him.
Yes.
And I would disagree 80% with the team that'll go in with him on policy, right? But I know that they're not going to damage the country.
Yes.
I'll go back to doing that.
Bingo.
With Donald Trump, no decent Republican wants to go in and serve with him. And those that were and did it the first time, they're all hiring lawyers, and they're all writing books saying they'll never do it again.
Or voting for Kamala Harris.
Or voting for Kamala Harris. So the problem is not just him. The problem is who's going to govern. Who are the 4,000, 5,000 people? And that's how many people go into Washington when new administration goes in. Who are these 5,000 and what's their capabilities? Are they the A team? No. Are they the B team? No. Are they the C team? Hell no, they're not. They're going to be people that are
The Schedule F team.
Schedule F team, absolutely.
Well, scarier is they're going to be the true believers that Donald Trump wants there, because the first time around was a practice run.
Now they know what to do.
Where he now understands that he can't have people there that aren't going to do exactly what he tells them to do.
Yeah.
Before, people came in and Republicans were saying, oh, he has guardrails because John Kelly and General Milley and even Mike Pence, right? Well, we now know how that worked out for them and what they all think now. And so now, to your point, he's going to hire people that are his lemmings, that will do exactly what he wants, that are on the same page about, the fake electors and putting in mass deportation camps and, going after the enemy from within.
And that's why this is not going to be over in 2 weeks. We're
That's
not done
correct.
in November 5, folks.
I agree.
That's why, if you can
Sadly.
imagine, I think sometimes a lack of imagination can be very dangerous. And if we can imagine it in politics, they're already planning it.
Yep.
That's what Project 2025 is. That's their handbook. That's their roadmap. They showed us what they are going to do. Yeah, but he's never heard of it. 130 of his former staffers or, political appointees wrote the thing, but I don't know. He coffee boyed Project 2025. He tried to anyway. But that was one of the things that I think, at least, that the media and the Democrats and Kamala's campaign was very good at defining that. They didn't see that coming, and they tried to walk away from it, but they can't. There's just too many fingerprints on it. But if you can imagine Department of Homeland Security Secretary Stephen Miller. These are the people who will be in charge. And if the Republicans take the Senate, they'll approve him.
Yep.
And if they don't, they'll put him in as a czar. And then,
Or no Department of Education. Look,
that's right. Or they'll try to dismantle the Department of
right?
Education. Or change the Department of Health and Human Services to the Department of Life.
Yep.
It's very Orwellian. It's very Handmaid's Tale. You have Mike Johnson. If the Republicans maintain control of the House, Mike Johnson is responsible this time for overseeing the certification of the January 6th election process, not Nancy Pelosi this time. Mike Johnson.
By the way.
I know. I don't even want to talk. We
Sadly
didn't really get to down ballot, but Mike Johnson was part of the fake electors scheme.
Yep.
He was one of the people. That's why he's so ingratiated to Donald Trump and why Trump likes him. And we've normalized him as a Speaker of the House. The media did, and other members did, and despite his extremist positions on a lot of things, including his Christian nationalism, which is a whole nother undercurrent of this situation with MAGA. When you have people who believe that it's a calling from God to support Trump and to look at the other side as enemies, that's very dangerous too.
I left that in the Middle East and came here.
Right.
Look at
That's
that.
right.
So many people.
That's right. We're going to open it up to questions. Glenn, how would you like me just to point whoever? Are we bringing mics to them? Okay, right here in the front row. Ladies first.
I have absolutely two different thoughts, and both of them I think are equally important. I have been
See, you're a woman. You can have two different thoughts
That's
at the
right.
same time.
amazing.
Amazing.
No, I've been canvassing for several weeks, and I've been going to apartment complexes, which is clearly lower income. And while we're talking about all the rationals of all this, when you knock on the door and you talk to that person, they can't grasp all this overwhelming data that's coming at them. So their opinions are already set, and some of them have something to do with reality, and some of them have nothing to do with reality. But they but they also feel very disenfranchised, and they say, my vote doesn't matter. And so we are trying to explain to them, no, the difference between a democracy and many other countries in the world is that your vote does matter, and you need to use it. And to the point about face-to-face contact, I really do have experienced how important it is to engage in a conversation and have eye to eye and make sure that they know that I care about them as human beings, and that additionally their voice matters. Mm-hmm. So that's one thing that I'd like to point out, because this group is highly educated, and I don't think any of us are poor. But the other point that I want to make.
Good for you for doing that, by the way. That's amazing.
It's not easy in this environment.
Yeah.
And by the way, these decisions that are made, it's not just poor, okay?
Yeah.
There are some real educated people today that are intellectuals, that are professionals, that are doctors and engineers and so on, and also have made up their mind, and you're not changing it at this point.
Yeah. The other thing that I want to throw out there is that I am very concerned that even if Kamala wins by enough of a margin to make it clear that she won, I have not seen the evidence that Trump will give up. And so my feeling is that November 6th, 7th, 8th, I'm really quite frightened that this might end up being bloody.
Well, how many people here have seen the movie Civil War? That was one of the toughest movies I've ever had to watch. I had a lump in my throat from the first 5 minutes.
I don't want to watch it because
you have to. You have to watch it. If you have not seen that movie, you should. And why I felt that way, and I'm from New Jersey, and so I'm not like overly conspiratorial here. I'm incapable of bullshit. And that movie, it's a blessing and a curse, trust me. But that movie in particular was troublesome to me because it felt plausible.
Yeah.
And I never in my life thought that I would ever feel that way in 2024. But to your point, with what Donald Trump is saying, the rhetoric, his unabashed use of wanting to use the military and bragging about that against own U.S. citizens, the fact that he is sending signals, the stand back and stand by Proud Boys thing in 2020 is mild in comparison. They're going after FEMA workers now. He just did it again today, basically not condemning the people who are going after disaster relief workers. He is building up this army of people again, and once again using religion as a cover so they can rationalize it. I worry about that too a lot. Am I the only one? I'm not alone in
you're
that.
not.
Yeah, no, look, I did see the movie. It is disturbing.
It is.
I lived through a civil war. Nothing that I would wish on anyone. I'm not afraid of a civil war for two reasons. One, if he loses, there may be idiots on the streets, but I think our government had learned from January 6th, and it would be controlled.
Yeah. They're
The danger-
planning. They're planning that.
Yeah. The danger, I said, if he loses, we may have idiots on the streets, but those idiots will be under control because our government knows better after January 6th. The danger is not civil war. The danger is the power, if he wins, of how he uses the government against certain populations. And that will not cause civil war. Nobody's going to come out and fight him or the government when he starts rounding up Latinos or Muslims, right? Not civil war. We'll fight him politically, but there's not going to be civil war then.
So I agree, not civil war, but there is a scenario, hopefully not very plausible, where Kamala wins by a smidgen. Electors in these states who already have some people that are there that have already said, you know, I'm going to support Donald, whatever,
No matter
right?
what.
They're not going to
Right.
certify the election.
Right.
Enough of those happen where she gets below 270, or maybe it's 270, and then it goes to the House.
Correct.
That-
What the hell happens if it goes to the House? They will give it to Trump.
That's right.
Yes.
And
That terrifies me.
I agree with you.
Yes.
And I also think that there's the other scenario too, which is she wins and there are still millions of Americans who don't believe the election results.
Right.
Then what do you do? How do you control that?
Yeah.
I mean,
Won't cause civil war, but then we'll have a lot of work to do in the next 4 years.
Yeah.
Carl Bernstein in 2020 said that he felt that we were in a cold civil war and that he feared it would turn hot.
Oh, Jesus.
And that was 2020. A lot has changed, and that was
lot of-
pre-January
yeah.
6th.
Yeah.
So, again, don't fall into the potential of lack of imagination. We have to be prepared for everything.
So what we have to make sure happens is that Kamala wins with such an overwhelming margin that there's no question. And by the way, I don't think that's out of the question that could happen.
Listen, anything's possible
I really
at this
don't.
point. Okay, more questions.
Here, on that,
Wait,
let me
in
just give you some good
Oh,
news
yeah, the
there.
numbers, right?
Because the numbers that came out of the Shar and Washington Post today puts Kamala winning in Georgia, in Michigan, in Nevada, in Georgia, in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
That's
and it
tied
is
in Nevada,
tied in
right?
Nevada.
Yeah.
If the analysis here works, right, where we think there's that silent woman, I think this would be 280, 285
agreed.
Electoral vote.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Won't be
Let's
too
hope so.
If not,
Yes, ma'am. Student in the back. And then I'll come to this side.
Hi, thank you guys so much for taking the time.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Kind of shifting the focus back to where we are today and revisiting your idea about how the campaigns are now just focused on GOTV. What strategies are both campaigns using now that have been unique to this election cycle that you think will be effective in mobilizing those voters that, as you've talked about, they've either narrowed or expanded their base in that way?
So one of the greatest things that I heard when Kamala Harris became president was my daughter, I'm sorry.
Once again,
Oh my God,
your mouth
see?
to God's ears.
Look at that, Freudian slip. Became the candidate, was when my daughter said to me, oh my God, Mama, I saw a Kamala Harris ad or video on TikTok. And I was like, that like, to me, that was a game changer. Because before that, she had only seen memes making fun of Biden's age, right? And now she's seeing all these great Kamala Harris, and then my son too, and then we started seeing that her comms team was freaking brilliant on social media and really living the moment because they had Gen Zers doing the social media, right? And so I see a lot of people's heads nodding. And it just, to me, I was like, these people, they are here to play. And to me, that's a game changer because that's not really something that the Biden campaign was doing. And I think that, Biden won the young vote overwhelmingly in 2020. Obviously, this time around, that was one of the big alarm bells that he's not going to be able to do the same thing. I think she can do it because they have really changed the game in terms of how they are playing in the social media world on all of these platforms, on the podcast, the Call Your Daddy, all these other ones that she's doing. And I just think they have been brilliant at going to where all the voters are and going to where no other candidate has been before.
David, do you have anything to contribute to that?
I'll pass. I'll let you go.
Well, I agree with
I'm not
Maria.
that hip.
Oh, I agree with Maria that the landscape of what constitutes get out the vote now is very different. And even for me, I'm only 49, and even I feel like I still think I'm cool, but I'm actually not. And so, but looking at the way that their comms, I come from a political communications background. That's what I did for years. And looking at the way that you have to play the game you're in, and not the game that you're used to or that you wish you were in. You have to play the game that you're in. And that was the difference between the Republican campaigns in 2008 and 2012 when the Obama camp won because they learned how to adapt, as I mentioned before. And the Democrats are doing that again in this case. So how you communicate matters. Perception is reality. And they are going to where the more disengaged voters, people who are, we live and breathe this. We are highly informed, educated voters right here. Most of America is not us. They're not. And so you have to be able to speak that language, be there and be present. You have to play the game that you're in. And I think that they've done that, which is different. Now, on the Trump side, what I think that they're doing this time that's different, I think the idea that he's not running a traditional get out the vote effort on the ground is to his detriment.
I agree.
Because you still have to get the butts to the ballots, to the polls. You have to.
Talking to people like
that's right. Those things
matters.
are never going to change because until you
just
can
calling them fat and get their ass off. And
yeah.
in
Imagine
Michigan,
that.
in a rally, Jill, get your fat husband out. That doesn't work. Okay. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think so. In their minds, apparently they think it does, but it doesn't. And certain things will never change in politics until we're able to vote from our phones in our beds, which I hope never happens because we should be responsible citizens in getting out and voting.
Exactly.
Being good stewards of our democracy. But until that happens, you still have to have that voter engagement. This side. Okay, right here.
Thank you. In a race so tight, it seems to me that a third-party candidate could have a lot of effect. And I'm hearing that Jill Stein is polling well, especially in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and especially among Muslim voters. And I'm just wondering what you think about that.
God, she's the Ralph Nader of of this again. I wish Jill Stein would just stop it. What I don't understand at this point, there's just how self-centered and unaware can you be at this point, given what's on the line? But that's tell me how you really feel about Jill Stein. I just think that these third-party candidates, it's nothing but a vanity candidacy, and to pull votes at this point. She did it in 2016. Hillary would have won if it hadn't been for Jill Stein and the Bernie Bros, but that's another conversation. But Maria, do you think that Jill Stein is a factor this time around? Because we really haven't heard as much about it. People were worried about RFK Jr., which I'll never understand either. But I do, but I don't. Yeah. But do you think that that's going to be a factor this time?
Only in so much as we're talking about how tight of a race it is and how every single little percentage counts. So in that realm, yes. But to your point, I think it has that has died down some. Again, talking about sort of some of the game-changing strategies of the Kamala Harris campaign, they're putting out ads about Jill Stein and about what it means, right, to vote for her in terms of what is at stake in this election, which I think is really smart because they're not taking it for granted.
Right.
And so I'm happy about that, because even though you don't hear as much about it now, some of those percentages could absolutely work to bring her over, the top, which is great. So I think in that sense, we should not take anything for granted.
I voted third party in 2016. I will never do that again. Ever. Ever, ever, ever.
Don't count on that Muslim vote to go to Jill Stein.
I was
That's all
just going to ask
talk.
you about that.
That's all talk in Michigan. They may not vote, but they're not going to vote for Jill Stein. That's just political talk put out mostly by by Trump and his side, by his in-laws' family who are Lebanese, who claim they know and understand Michigan. They know nothing about Michigan. I'll tell you, that's the first one I'm watching to throw in people's face. Minority communities, and the Arab American community did this back with George W. Bush. George W. Bush was probably one of the best presidents for Arab Americans. He had the highest number of employees that came into the White House that were from Arab Americans. He was very friendly to the community. Right after 9/11, the day after, instead of the blame game, W went down to a mosque on Pennsylvania Avenue.
Very controversial at the time.
Which was the advice, and I'll give credit to Ed Gillespie. Ed Gillespie was the one who gave him that advice. Yet the Arab American community dropped W after the Iraq War. It's an emotional vote, right? They vote with their heart. They are feeling that emotions. Those emotions are real today because of the Israeli-Arab war that's happening in Lebanon and Gaza. But that emotion is going to stop them. And by the way, it's not a monolithic community, right? The Lebanese versus the Palestinians versus the Iraqis, and there's a huge Christian Chaldean community in Michigan. They're not going to vote for Jill Stein. They're going to divvy up that vote across, and I don't think it's going to make a difference. The only detriment to I'm sad to see it, but it's going to be a detriment to those Arab Democrats that are going to lose their influence in your party, like Arab Republicans lost their influence in the party after they dropped W. After this election, the Jim Zugbys of the world are not going to have, he's not going to have access to the White House afterwards.
He's having trouble.
Right? He's having trouble as it is now. So these communities that drop their party affiliations at the time off are only going to hurt themselves at the end.
Next question. Another student, we're giving them carte blanche today. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I know y'all were talking about folks who seem dissatisfied with both candidates, and we were talking a little bit about those razor-thin margins and how every inch makes a difference. And I believe one of you said something along the lines of the Harris campaign is doing everything they can to win every vote, going everywhere from Liz Cheney to Bernie Sanders. And so in Pennsylvania, 34% of voters said they would be more likely to vote for a candidate who vowed to withhold aid to Israel versus 7% who said they'd be less likely. Arizona, those numbers were 35% said they would be more likely. First 5% said they would be less likely. In Georgia, 39% said they'd be more likely, whereas 5% said they'd be less likely. So if they're doing everything possible, why not just take the leap and get that extra 30 to 40%?
Well, I would.
I'm sorry. They were more likely to
vote for the candidate who vowed to withhold aid to Israel.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
I would like to see the crosstabs on that.
Yeah.
On that poll. Who are they polling? What's their age group? Are they low propensity voters? I think what 39% matters on that. As we saw in some polling, that the Israel-Gaza issue was about here on the list of things that were a priority for people that moved them on their vote. So it's tough to have analysis on that without seeing the crosstabs, because who they polled matters on that.
I'll tell you what as well. we were talking about principles, right, and decency earlier. And we talked about foreign policy for a minute. Yes, the job of every candidate is to try to win the election, but you need to win it at what price? So you're hearing this from an Arab American who 50 of my family are displaced because of the Israeli bombs, right? But it's not the best interest of the United States to say today that we want to withhold anything to Israel. Mm-hmm. And the job of an American president is not to do what is the interest of my family in Lebanon. You know how hard it is for me to say so, right? 50 of my family are outside of their place. My grandfather's house was blown up last week. My aunt's house was blown up today, right? I get to block all of that when I'm talking about politics because the best interest of the United States is to maintain that relationship with Israel that exists today, despite all the trouble that comes with it. So it's not the job of a candidate to say, because I want to win an election, I'm going to do this. If it was in the best interest of the United States to stop all money to Israel at the time, then I'd say, sure, the candidate should say so, right? But we're going to take the emotion out of it and talk realpolitik here. Realpolitik is, that's not going to happen.
I'm glad that you're on the panel to answer that from a personal perspective, because I think that's lost on a lot of people.
Very powerful.
That even for someone who is so personally impacted by what's happening, that you're willing to cast that aside for the greater good, I think is an incredible testament to not only your patriotism, but the maturity of what we need and the types of people we need, thoughtful people about these types of policies, that it can't always be an emotional response sometimes.
Though I will say to that whole issue, you can't discount that Kamala Harris has gone further than anyone has in actually saying and saying out loud that it is important how Israel conducts themselves in this war. And that is very indicative of going a lot further than anyone and calling out Netanyahu in terms of how he has gone into this war and
he's out of control.
Exactly,
he's out of control.
And she has called it out.
Yeah.
So I think that's important to acknowledge.
He's out of control. I've described him as a rabid bear that is out of control, and he needs to be stopped.
By the way, I'm convinced he's doing this to hurt Harris and help Trump.
He's doing it for his own survival because he's got the same problems.
Yes,
remember,
Trump,
before October 7, he was about to lose his job and probably go to jail. Yep. And there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis on the streets every day asking every week, every weekend, right after the Sabbath.
That's right.
And they were out on the streets wanting peace and so on. He is not doing the best interest of Israelis with what he's doing.
He's doing the best interest of
him. There are 50,000 people dead that shouldn't have died.
Exactly.
Shouldn't have died. Yep. Yes, they were attacked on October 7, but the response is beyond human acceptable response.
Yep.
And that I cannot put aside either.
Yep.
Another October surprise would have been the fact that intelligence was leaked about the Israeli plans and with the bombing.
He was told.
I mean, that would have been huge.
He was told, and he gave money to Hamas.
Yeah, it's crazy. One more question, right here. Yes, front row. If we're quick, maybe we'll squeeze in.
So, what's going to happen to the Republican Party when Trump loses?
I'm done. I'm leaving on that one.
Wow.
For us disenfranchised conservatives.
Well,
it's dead.
I'll say something first, but David, you are not getting away with not saying something about this. I mean, I've been very outspoken, and I think the party should burn to the ground, and that the cancer has metastasized so badly that there is no going back to the days of, compassionate conservatism and George H.W. Bush and Ronald Reagan glory days, and those days are over in this current iteration of the Republican Party. That party died a couple deaths. The first time was when Donald Trump got elected and they enabled it. The second time was when Donald Trump stood in Helsinki next to Vladimir Putin and took his word over our own intelligence community. Another time was right here in Charlottesville in 2017, where he said there are good people on both sides. Another time was during the Brett Kavanaugh Supreme Court nomination, when they didn't have the courage to stand up to what happened there and deny him. He should not have gotten that Supreme Court seat after what was revealed. Either you believe women or you don't. Another time the party died another death was when Donald Trump during COVID was telling people to inject themselves with bleach, and we shouldn't believe science, and was, touting ivermectin and withholding aid to certain states because they didn't vote for him in his mind, and talk about needless deaths. How many Americans died needlessly because of his irresponsibility? Another time was on November when,
You got her started.
Well, I spent more than half my life in the Republican Party and had to walk away from it because of what the party acquiesced to. And the fact that they were willing to sell out every constitutional principle they claim to believe in to support Donald Trump in order to maintain their own power and relevance. Cognitive dissonance is a hell of a drug. And the day that I decided to leave, because I tried to stay in through the Trump administration, not supporting him, but to kind of be like part of the conscience, to hold them accountable and call out the hypocrisy and be there when he did lose and to build the party back up again. But after he decided to not concede the election in 2020 and stood in the hallowed ground of the East Room of the White House and denied the election, and Republican leaders who knew better, who hated him, who talked about him behind closed doors as an idiot and a danger and all that, the Mitch McConnells, the Paul Ryans, go down the list. And they stood there and let him get away with that and then went along with it. That led up to January 6th. I come from a law enforcement family. My grandfather was captain of my hometown police department. He was a police officer for 40 years, a volunteer fireman for 72. I am married to a federal law enforcement officer. I worked in Capitol Hill. I ran those halls in my 5-inch heels, which is why I wear sneakers now, for 7 years, okay? Proud to be there, still enamored with the grandiose, beautiful history of our Capitol. And to watch what happened on January 6th and have Republicans still not cast this man out onto the ash heap of history where he deserves to be, the party is dead and gone. So what happens if he loses again this time? Some of those people will try to rewrite history like they have now, and they'll try and just act like he wasn't there anymore, and they'll try. But MAGA's not going away. It's not. This is a generational fight. And I think that there are people who are underestimating how you have the J.D. Vance types and the people who follow him that are, in my opinion, more dangerous because they're smarter.
Yep.
And so
Totally agree.
if you're voting for Donald Trump, you think J.D. Vance isn't waiting in the wings? We have an ad out called The Accomplice about this, and another one called Heartbeat. J.D. Vance would be one 78-year-old Big Mac eating heartbeat away from the presidency. And is that what you want? Is that where the Republican Party wants to go? They seem to think that that's quite all right. That's if he well, even if he loses, the J.D. Vance types of the world are not going to go away. They see an opening. They'll try and recast
take up the
themselves.
mantle.
That's right. And he even said it. His own son was like, "This is that's right. That's right. Junior will come in
How did
and
Vance become VP?
well, that's
It was
right.
a deal.
That's right.
Let's make you VP, make
That's
me
right.
VP.
So I think that you will see the Republican Party turn into a fascist authoritarian party within Brooks Brothers suits, unless it burns to the ground, which I'll be happy to be there once it does, to rebuild a party that's right of center. I think David would join me in that. And there, my good friend Denver Riggleman, who used to be a congressman here. There are good people that are still right of center that would love to be able to have that. We need to have that.
Liz
we don't
Cheney.
want to be, Liz Cheney. I mean, Nikki Haley had an opportunity to be a part of be a part of that, but she chose once again to sell her soul, and I don't know for what, but decided that it wasn't worth it for her, which again is disappointing. I blame the enablers more than I blame Donald Trump. Last question. Student, yes.
kind of expands on this and goes back to your earlier part of your model. And in talking about coalition building, I wonder what your all's thoughts are on the swing state Senate candidates, where the Republicans are doing worse than Donald Trump, but they're doing this big, they're attempting a bigger tent. They're not trying to do this toxic masculinity, but they're doing worse. And I was wondering, how does your all's model kind of explain that?
David?
If there was, or if there could be, back to the dreaded October surprise, it could be the Montana one, by the way, right? The Republican candidate, which is a craziness. Not all of them are doing worse, some are doing better. The Montana Republican candidate who claimed he was injured in war had shot himself in a park, right? Yet he's likely still to win despite that. That connects to where we are, or not we anymore. It hurts me to not be able to say we. I spent 30 years in the party I worked from. The guy who was putting out signs or even carried the little flag for George Herbert Bush, vice president at the time when he went to Beirut in 1983, and I was 13-year-old after the Marine bombing, and came here in 1989, went down DuPont Circle and volunteered for his campaign. And for every campaign from 1989 until I ran, and then I was in office, and I'm homeless. I'm not a Democrat, right? I'm homeless. I have no home.
We're homeless together.
We're homeless together.
We'll welcome you with open arms.
But there is no room for me in your party. There is no room, seriously. I mean, I've had that discussion with all my Democrat friends. I'm still a Second Amendment pro-lifer who believes in smaller government and no project labor agreements, and we'll go back to discussing those after we save a democracy.
That'd be great, right?
However, until then, the problem is beyond just, it started before Trump. Started with the Tea Party.
It did.
Every party had their crazies, right? I call them the crazies. The crazies were about 10% on each side. You have your crazies. We had our crazies on the Republican side. The problem is today is that the crazies became the majority. The crazies are over 50% today. They're about 60% of the party that truly believes this crap. Excuse my language. There's no effing way to say it except it is crap, right? And they believe it. They believe that immigrants ate cats and dogs last week. They believe that you send your boy to school and he's going to come back as a girl in the same day. I mean, they believe that shit. That is not the case on your side. You still have 10 or 15% crazies, right? But they're not in control.
Exactly.
So
they're not mainstream.
How's that going to change? Party died on, it was all the blows of death, but the party died on January 6th.
Yeah,
for sure.
And the party's not coming back after January 6th. I don't think, Bill Kristol and I, when we were campaigning for Terry 3 years ago, and I called, didn't take much. I called Bill, asked him if he would join me. He said, absolutely. We endorsed Terry McAuliffe. You were not campaigning. And one of the reporters asked him, so what are you guys? Are you Republicans or are you not? And I turned to Bill and said, how do you describe us today? And he said, former, future Republicans.
Oh, that's
right? He's more optimistic than I am. I am 54. I don't think I'll ever be a Republican again in my age, in my time.
Yeah.
What will happen after that? I don't know, but I don't see a party going back to where I belong in the next.
But let me answer a little bit about the Senate, because I do think the Senate is just a short answer, because I'm going upon time.
No, it's okay.
It's an interesting endeavor, and it's going to be really hard for Democrats to maintain control, because West Virginia's gone. John Tester's in trouble. He was doing pretty well up until recently, and I know that we had high hopes that he might pull it off. This whole thing that was uncovered by his opponent, will he be able to take advantage of it? Doubtful. But you know what might happen, and what could be maybe not in October, but a November surprise? Colin Allred in Texas. Right. Colin Allred in Texas is doing really, really well. He trounced Ted Cruz in the debate.
It was glorious.
And Ted Cruz is hated. They hate him in Texas. So,
Yes.
They hate him in the Senate. His own
Everybody
Republican
knows
Senate
him.
colleagues, exactly.
The only other person they hate more is J.D.
Somebody
Vance.
somebody had a great quote, like, people instantly hate Ted Cruz because
Ted Cruz?
they want to, no, because they don't want to waste any time or something like that.
I think
And
the
so-
best thing I remember about Ted Cruz is that he had a face for radio and a voice for email.
That's
Nobody
pretty good.
wants to see him or hear him.
Exactly.
His own family can't stand him, so that tells you a lot.
And then the Democrats have been able, in all the other races, Democrats have very good candidates and very good incumbents. And the Republicans, like in Arizona, Carrie Lake is crazy. Ruben Gallego has been a flawless candidate there. Jackie Rosen in Nevada is holding her own. Bob Casey in Pennsylvania, I think he's holding his own. He's doing what he can to, do to win, but I think he's holding his own. And so if we're able to pull it off in Texas, Sherrod Brown is also, he's teetering, but he knows how to win races in tough environments because that's where he's been doing it forever. So I'm pretty confident he'll be able to pull through. So.
But it's interesting, the split ticketing, right?
Yeah,
He'll win in
that's
Ohio, but Ohio will go for Trump.
Correct.
Arizona, Ruben Gallego is doing much better than Carrie Lake, but Kamala Harris is not performing at the same level. It's a fascinating dichotomy that we will be talking about for
the next
years.
panel after the election.
Yes, after the post-election panel, we will be talking about those results, and I know that Larry and the Crystal Ball folks will have plenty to say about that. As we wrap up tonight, final words and predictions. Maria.
I feel good that Kamala Harris will be able to pull it off. And I don't think that the race is as close as the polls say. Mostly because of women, like you said, not just because of the abortion, but because of everything else that has become something that they just cannot deal with. And I actually think it's maybe not just women. I think there are plenty of Americans who will go into the voting booth and say, I've had it. I have had it. We have to turn the page on this guy. We cannot have our country live through another 4 more years. And I think that is going to be the silent majority, I believe.
David?
I'm going to give credit for this to a kid, young gentleman now from Virginia Tech. I know, I'm here at UVA, I know. Chaz Nottingham. If you don't follow him, follow Chaz Nottingham on Twitter. He's a young, brilliant kid from Virginia Tech who started predictions and analyzing, and he was doing state races. And today he's the only one who does every state race in the nation.
Oh, wow.
He graduated. He's got his own company in 501c, and he's doing that.
Can he please take Nate Silver's job? 'Cause I'm over him.
Oh, he puts him to shame.
Good.
He was 100% in 2020. 100%, and he was 98% 100% 2022. He was 98% in 2020. And Chaz is brilliant. I talk to him, and we text all the time. He said, and I agree, so I'm giving him the credit for it, but I agree. It feels like 2012, not 2016, not even 2020, whereby the Democrats are going to overdo their polling numbers, and because of all the factors that we talked about. So, and it's not going to be that, well, it's still going to be close, but it's not going to be 271, right? It's going to probably be 285 by the time she's done.
Yeah.
And probably 5 or 6 of the 7 states, not just 3 or 4. Now, she still has to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And it's very hard if she loses one of those. But it feels that way. And if I was
she
putting
put North
money on it
Carolina
today,
in play. North Carolina was not in play until she
it's not.
became the nominee.
Yep. But I think you're going to lose both the House and the Senate.
I disagree with you. I agree. I'm optimistic about the Senate. I think we're going to take the House.
We'll see.
That's right. which will be an interesting dynamic if she wins but loses the House and the Senate. How do you govern?
That'll be so hard.
It's going to be so hard. I think that she pulls it off. I think Kamala Harris makes history and pulls it off. And that, but I will not sleep well until January 6th.
Correct.
And it's certified.
Until she's in the White House, frankly.
That's right. Well, yeah, January 20th at noon. But I think that the House is much more in play for Democrats to take back, and we'll have history again with Hakeem Jeffries as the first Black speaker. Senate, I don't know, but at least we'll have some semblance of an ability to govern. But I will end on this, that regardless of how close it is, I mean, obviously predictions now, I mean, who knows? David Axelrod said he'd be a fool to try to predict now. We don't know. But
So you're saying we're fools already?
no, I mean that's Axelrod. You can listen to Ax or not, but that's what he said. I mean, we'll play along, right? It's an academic exercise. We're in an academic
Glenn,
environment.
we need to bring Axelrod here.
Yeah, there you go.
But we've got Paul Vigala.
We did. Paul and
my good friend Paul.
We did one with Paul and who? Karl Rove, right? We did one with Karl Rove and Paul one time together.
Poor Karl Rove.
Yeah, 3 of us were on.
Did he
one.
bring his stupid little whiteboard thing with him?
It's not stupid.
Ah,
Yeah, he did.
I'm over Karl Rove too. Wait, speaking of, he needs to call up George W. and tell him to speak out. But that's another situation. Him and
I
Romney.
bet you
Where
he's
are they?
voting for her.
Kidding. He should say so.
They should say so, exactly. Now is not the time to be silent.
Yep.
And that's what I want to end on. It is so important that everyone take a position. This is not a time to be lukewarm. You cannot be lukewarm in a democracy and expect it to stand. We are responsible. Democracy does not defend itself. It is up to every one of us. And we will get the government that we deserve.
Yep.
And I feel as though that there are more people who love this country and love our constitutional order than don't. But it doesn't matter if they don't vote. So please, even though everyone in this room, I'm sure, is registered and has a plan to vote, but you have friends and family that live in battleground states, please make sure you have a plan, because our vote is our voice. And for ladies, my ballot, my choice.
Yep.
This is literally life or death for us, and it's life or death for the health of our democracy moving forward.
Yep.
So it's a time for choosing, and it's up to us.
Amen.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out. Thank you to our illustrious panel, David and Maria. Thank you to Glenn and everybody at the Center for Politics for putting this on, and thank you guys for coming out. Let's go win this.